man is born with an innate desire to worship. They will worship something. They may not worship God. They may not worship Jesus. But they will find something to worship. Whether religious or not, they will still find something to worship. It can't be helped. It is intrinsic. Everyone is born with this desire to worship. Now, people desire to worship, but they worship different things. Some people who worship God. Other people worship things that they set their desire on. They become fixated with maybe a certain thing, and that becomes their focus. Basically, whatever becomes your focus is what you worship. And so some people worship money. Some people worship heroes. Some people worship rock stars. I mean, it's just this intrinsic thing that we have within us that God placed in us when we were born. Every person is born with a desire to worship something. You see, we all have a void. And there are those that probably try to deny it. Say, oh no, I'm fine, I'm happy. Yeah, you hear people say that, but yet you see them pursuing things that makes it very evident that they are not happy. At least not totally. A prime example, of course, you know that I am a Green Bay Packer fan, among a couple of other teams as well, but my first love was the Green Bay Packers when I was 8 years old. And I've been a Packer fan ever since. And I will be honest with you, I am getting very, very sick of Aaron Rodgers. I'm getting sick of his passive aggressiveness and his game plan and his trying to manipulate everything. See, but here's a problem. He cannot be criticized. When he is criticized, he just comes unglued. Now, he tries to act like he's keeping it together, but he's not. And what does he do? He has all of these weird, what I call weird. Now, you may not call them weird, but I call them weird. These weird activities that he does. He just went on this, what it was supposed to have been a 4-day darkness retreat, but I only think he stayed 2. He wanted to go there and find himself, I guess. How you going to find yourself in the dark? Yeah. Maybe he sneaked in a flashlight. But he's always going something. This ayahuasca, whatever crap stuff that he drinks or whatever. I guess you drink it. On these ayahuasca journeys. Basically, it's all this new age wacko, to me, anyway, it's wacko. All of this crazy stuff that he does. And because, you know why? Because he's searching. There is that void in every person's soul that can only be filled by God. It can only be filled by the Holy Spirit. And until it is filled by God, there's going to be that void. Everybody has this void. They don't even realize it sometimes, but a lot of their behavior can explain by the simple fact that void exists, and they're searching. And the thing is, until that void is filled with God, you are always going to be searching for the truth. You're always going to be searching for something to fill that void. There's a craving, a hunger, a longing. You know it's there. and you're trying to fill it any which way you can. And so you see this. You see people trying to fill this void with things, with activities, and whatever else. Always searching, always longing, always hoping, but they're still never, ever able to fill that void. So man worships. That's his basic nature, is to worship. You may not understand it. You may not see it as that. But if you really look at your actions, you're trying to find something. You're trying to find some direction. You're trying to find some purpose. Why am I here? Right? Why am I here? Why was I put on this earth? Searching. And let me just say that that void can never be filled by anything outside. It can never be fulfilled by any material possession, any activity, any other person. Which that's a big mistake, is people try to fill that void by finding a partner. That partner can't fill that void. That partner can fill some things in your life. They can be a very good help to you. They can be a good companion. There's a lot of things that they can be. But one thing that they will never be able to do is to fill that void that only God can fill. It cannot be done. Now, the reason I say all of that is to lay the groundwork for what I want to get into now. Because here's the problem. The problem is people try to fill that void with everything except God. Do you know why? Because all of these other things that they pursue, all of these other things that they bring into their life, that they go after, they're pleasurable. They don't demand anything of you. They don't hold you accountable. They don't say, stay away from this sin and this sin and this sin, and don't do that because it's wrong, because it's sin. All these other things that people pursue don't hold them accountable. God does hold us accountable. And whether you believe in God or not, you are accountable. Plain and simple. You're accountable. And you will stand before him one day and give an account. Whether you think so or not, it's going to happen. So people try to fill these voids with everything but God. Even though deep down they know that God exists, they still try to fill their life with everything but God. A good example of this explained is in Romans chapter 1. And it's talking about the judgment of God that's coming. And if you don't understand what was coming, this was fairly close to 70 A.D. If you ever get the chance, read about what all happened in 70 A.D. when the Jewish nation fell. It's something else. Flavius Josephus. You can read his works. They're free online, where he recounts the horrendous war that took place. The temple was destroyed. It has not been rebuilt since. The nation was scattered. I can't even begin to get into the things that happened. So this is what was impending. This is what was coming. And Paul says this in Romans chapter 1, verse 18. He says, for God's wrath is being revealed. He says is revealed, but in the Greek, It actually is a continuous process. So it should read, "For God's wrath is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and unrighteousness of people who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth." Isn't that interesting? By their unrighteousness, they suppress the truth. Just like I said, they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to know God is going to judge me. So what do? They suppress the truth. And it says that in their unrighteousness, they suppress the truth, since what can be known about God is evident among them, because God has shown it to them. That's what I talked about yesterday. For his invisible attributes, that is, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen since the creation of the world, being understood through what he has made. Yeah. It's like I said yesterday. If you think that all of this, the intricacies of the human body that has to be working perfectly to stay alive, the universe which has to be working perfectly for us not to be blown off the face of the earth, the space, the infinite space in which our planet rests, if you think all of that just sprung out of nothing, you are crazy. Because that is so anti-common sense and it's anti-science. Every law of science refutes evolution. Evolution is an impossibility. It could never, ever happen. There is only one answer for even being here, for our universe being here, that had to have been created by a superior being. And God tells us in his word that he created the heavens and the earth. He's told us how it happened. But people don't believe it because why? Because they're suppressing the truth. And Paul says they suppress the truth, and God has shown them all the evidence that they ever need. He says, as a result, people are without excuse. For though they knew God, they did not glorify him as God or show gratitude. Instead, their thinking became worthless, and their senseless hearts were darkened. See, the longer you suppress the truth, the longer you reject God, the harder your heart gets. To where you finally get to the point where your heart has gotten so hard that you have no chance. And you will spend eternity in hell. It's a progression, folks. Each time you reject the truth, your heart gets a little harder. Each time you say no to God, your heart gets a little harder. And you harden your heart, you harden your heart, and you harden your heart. And then finally, you come to the point where there's no chance. It says that their senseless heart were darkened, claiming to be wise. That's a key phrase there. That's basically the crux of what I'm talking about today. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, birds, four-footed animals, and reptiles. It's always interesting that when man sets up a statue, it's like, the other day we were looking at that Bohemian Grove, and they have a 40-foot statue of an owl. Isn't it interesting that man is worshiping these idols that represent creatures of a much lower capacity, much lower tier than mankind? Why would I want to worship something that's beneath me in both mentally and it just makes no sense. Said they became fools and exchanged the glory for these images of all these animals and reptiles and snakes. And it says, therefore, okay, because they did this, therefore God delivered them over in the desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, so that their bodies were degraded among themselves. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served what has been created instead of the Creator. And people, that is exactly where we are today. That is exactly, of course, it's been like that. It was like that 2,000 years ago when Paul wrote this. And it hasn't changed. But let me tell you, our country has gone so downhill the last 50 years. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when things were just, life was kind of carefree. You didn't have the dangers that you do today. We could run all over town on our bikes and stuff, and we could leave our bikes outside the stores. You know, nobody stole them. We could leave our doors unlocked. Nobody ever broke in. Things were just a lot different, and we keep going downhill and more downhill and more downhill. And this is exactly the reason why. Because, number one, we kick God out of schools. You can't mention God in school anymore, but you can mention evolution, which is not even science. It's anti-science. Yeah, we teach our kids, and our tax money goes to teach our kids evolution that we don't believe in. And that's a bunch of bull. But we've come to where we worship the creation more than the Creator. People worship themselves. People are narcissistic, put themselves above everything. And people think they're wise. And again, I think back to Aaron Rodgers and how he's so smug and thinks he's so intelligent. And it's amazing to me because people look at us who believe the Bible and they think we're idiots. Oh, I'm too intelligent to believe that. Oh, you guys believe in those fairy tales? Oh, I'm too good to believe that. I'm too smart to believe that. No, you're a fool. See, you think you're wise, but you're actually on a lower tier. Because the wisdom of the Bible is so far above and beyond anything that man could ever come up with on his own. So you don't believe in God, truthfully, you're on a lower tier. Well, I don't believe in the Bible. You're on a lower tier. Oh, okay, let's get this straight. I believe the Bible. I believe that God created all things. I believe God created the heavens and the earth. I believe that God breathed into man the breath of life and he became a living soul. Okay, now you explain to me how that can happen from a rock. Oh, wait, even better yet, explain to me where the rock came from. How could there be nothing? And then there's us. Okay, before you start telling me that my Bible is a bunch of fairy tales, let's look at your fairy tale. Let's look at how things can explain to me, number one, and I say this to an evolutionist, I say this to any scientist. Before you start giving me all this rhetoric about, well, in a closed system, and which is all a bunch of horse crap, before you start going off on that, first explain to me how there could be nothing. Oh, the Big Bang, something exploded. Yeah, what does explosions do? Have you ever seen the aftermath of a suicide bomber? You think that life is going to come as a result of an explosion? Seriously? But even if something did explode, what exploded? Where did this entity or matter come from that exploded in the first place? Look, until you can explain that, shut your mouth. on everything else. Okay, survival of the fittest and all that means nothing unless you can explain the arrival of the fittest. Unless you can explain where things came from without a supernatural cause. If you're really honest with yourself, then that's the problem. People are so tied into their evolutionary theory that they can't even think properly. Oh, I'm so smart. I'm so intelligent. I'm so smug. No, you're an idiot. You really are. You're a fool. The Bible says you're a fool. It says, thinking themselves to become wise, thinking themselves to be wise, they became fools. Have you ever heard the term educated idiot? Yeah, there's a lot of those around. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18 through 20 is also a good passage that I really like. It says, let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks he is wise in this age, let him become a fool so that he can become wise. What is he saying there? Christians were thought of as foolish. Bible believers were thought of as foolish by the intellectual crowd. Intelligentsia. He says, look, if you think you're wise, let you become a fool. Now, when he's saying a fool, he's talking about in the eyes of those who don't believe. He's talking about in the eyes of those who think the Bible is ridiculous and a bunch of fairy tales. So if you want to become wise, become a fool. In the sense that you are on a different level now. When you believe the Bible and you believe what it actually says, you're actually on a different level. It says, for the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. All right, all your education, all your intellect, and your, whatever you think you are intellectually, God just looks at you and laughs and thinks you're a fool. And by the way, so do us who believe in the Bible. We see things as they are because God gives us wisdom from the Bible to see things as they really are. And so we look at those that are outside this realm on a lower tier, even if it doesn't matter if they have a doctorate degree, a PhD, and a PhD around here just means post-hole digger. It doesn't matter, people. It doesn't matter how much education you have, how smart you think you are. You're foolish before God. And if you reject God, you're even more foolish. He says, for it is written. He says, no, wait a minute. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God, since it is written. He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows that the reasonings of the wise are futile or vain. The wisdom that comes from the Bible is so far above and beyond anything that man could ever come up with. In fact, I would really hate to see what society would be like if we didn't have the Bible. See, this country was founded, even though our forefathers were not the most moral of people. Still, what morality there is in our laws comes from the Bible. The reason we have laws comes from the Bible. I can't even imagine what society would be like, how horrendous it would be, how lawless it would be, how profligate it would be if our laws were not based on the Bible. What does it say on our currency? in God we trust. You see, even though there were people who were involved in different things, still there was this common, I want to say, conception or idea or thought of God. In the book of Job, chapter 38, Job had been complaining about some things and basically saying that God wasn't doing things right. Well, God took great offense to that. And when you talk about reading somebody of the riot act, boy, this is the epitome of that. God has a few questions for Job in chapter 38. And as we read through this chapter, I want you to think about each question. What if you were standing before God and he was asking you these same questions? How would you answer them? I think it would tend to show us all how stupid we really are, how limited our knowledge is compared to God's. All right, let's look at what he said to Job. He says, "Then the Lord answered Job from the whirlwind. He said, 'Who is this who obscures my counsel with ignorant words?'" Yeah, God's getting on him. Who is this dude? Who is this dude who's basically saying, I don't know what I'm talking about? He says, "Get ready to answer me like a man. When I question you, you will inform me. Where were you when I established the earth? Ooh. Tell me if you have understanding. Who fixed its dimensions? Certainly you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? What supports its foundations? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Who enclosed the sea behind doors when it burst from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and total darkness its blanket? When I determined its boundaries and put its bars and doors in place? When I declared, you may come this far, but no farther? Your proud waves stop here. Think about that for a minute. What is it? The earth is something like 2/3 water, but yet it doesn't pass its boundaries. Kind of amazing, isn't it? Can you explain how it does it? Well, I think we can explain it scientifically to a certain extent, but I don't think totally. He says, have you ever in your life commanded the morning or assigned the dawn its place, so it may seize the edges of the earth and shake the wicked out of it? The earth is changed as clay is by a seal. Its hills stand out like the folds of a garment. Light is withheld from the wicked, and the arm raised in violence is broken. Have you traveled to the sources of the sea, or walked in the depths of the oceans? No. We can only go so deep. There's a lot of unexplored area down there that we're not able to get to. We may in the future as technology increases. He says, have the gates of death been revealed to you? Have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Have you comprehended the extent of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. Where is the road to the home of light? Do you know where darkness lives, so you can lead it back to its border? Are you familiar with the paths to its home? Don't you know? You were already born. You have lived so long. Have you entered the place where the snow is stored? Or have you seen the storehouses of hail, which I hold in reserve for times of trouble, or the day of warfare and battle? What road leads to the place where light is dispersed? Where is the source of the east wind that spreads across the earth? Who cuts a channel for the flooding rain, or clears the way for lightning to bring rain on an inhabited land, on a desert with no human life, to satisfy the parched wasteland and cause the grass to sprout? Does the rain have a father? Who fathered the drops of dew? Whose womb did the ice come from? Who gave birth to the frost of heaven, when water becomes as hard as stone and the surface of the watery depths is frozen? Can you fasten the chains of the Pleiades or loosen the belt of Orion? Can you bring out the constellations in their season and lead the bear and her cubs? Do you know the laws of heaven? Can you impose its authority on earth? Can you command the clouds so that a flood of water covers you? Can you send out lightning bolts as they go? Do they report to you? Here we are. Who put wisdom in the heart, or gave the mind understanding? That's a good one. Yeah, basically, how did mind come about? How did mind come out of matter? No possible way unless it's supernatural. Who has the wisdom to number the clouds? Or who can tilt the water jars of heaven when the dust hardens like cast metal and the clods of dirt stick together? Can you hunt prey for a lioness or satisfy the appetite of young lions when they crouch in their dens and lie in wait within the lairs? Who provides the raven's food when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? People, can you imagine the technology that we would have to come up with to create a world, to create a universe, to create all of the laws that keep everything in place and don't let it just run amok? People, you do realize if God hadn't set laws in place, this earth would spin so fast that it would throw us all off into space. Everything has to work in perfect synchronicity. Everything. The universe, your body. Can you imagine if the sun burned out? We'd be dead within a second. But it's not going to happen because God's in control. Can you imagine if the earth tilted again, as I believe it did in the time of Noah's flood? I can't even imagine what a catastrophe that would be if it tilted back again. People, our power, our minds, our brains are so inferior, and that's putting it mildly. To look at the wonders of the human body, to look at the wonders of the universe, and realize the intelligence of God, the power of God. People, I don't see how that could not make you feel foolish compared to Him. So those of you who think you're intellectual, those of you who think you're too smart, believe the Bible. God says you're a fool. Can you answer any of the questions that He asked Job? Oh, we might be able to answer them to a certain extent, some of them. But there's a lot of them you'll never be able to explain. Because God has set laws in motion to take care of everything. People, we're nothing. We really aren't. We're nothing. the smartest person on this earth is still foolish compared to God. Your pride and arrogancy and faith in your abilities and in your intelligence, that's only going to accomplish one thing for you, and that's to keep you out of heaven and to send you to hell for all eternity. That's what happened to Satan. The Bible says that he was the most beautiful of all the angels. But then he started becoming vain and started taking pride in how beautiful he was. And look, we have no right to be proud about anything. God made us who we are. God designed who we were born to. God made it so we can be our level of intelligence. There's nothing, or like we were born to be really good looking or something like that, which I wasn't, but people, you see people that are conceited about being good looking. Well, did you create yourself? No. Like Paul said, he says, what have we that we did not receive? And he's talking about that very thing, being proud and arrogant. Nothing we have, we did on our own. Oh, we might have studied and became intelligent or educated, not necessarily intelligent. We may have done that. We may have educated ourselves. Yeah, but God made you so your mind could absorb that. Maybe God made you so your mind could absorb a little more than other people. That you're gifted with great intelligence. But you're still a fool compared to God. You'll always be a fool compared to God. That's just it. That's the bottom line. So, bottom line is this. Don't let your arrogance, don't let your pride keep you from the truth. We were not a result of some accident. We were not a result of some substances coming together in a pool of water somewhere and forming life. That's just crazy. That could never happen. Every law of science disproves that theory. The fact is, you were created in God's image. The fact is, you are accountable to God. The fact is, one day you will stand before God. But some of you, maybe who watch this video, are going to let your pride and your arrogance take you straight to hell when you die. Because you believe that you're far superior than what you really are. But you're not superior. In fact, if you fail to accept the Bible as truth and God as truth, His way of salvation is truth, you're just a complete fool. A complete fool. So let me just say to you today, you need to make a decision. Where do you want to spend eternity? Like I said yesterday, my video. God's provided a way of salvation, and it's not through any effort of your own. If you think it is, you're in trouble. And trust me, you will not make it to heaven. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. Jesus is the gate, the narrow gate that he talked about. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. There's only one way to heaven, people, and that is through Jesus, and trusting in what he did on the cross, and his shed blood is the reason for your salvation. If you understand that he already took your sin upon himself and was punished on the cross in your place, he stepped in for you. But he's not going to force salvation on anybody. That choice is up to you.